tonight on First at 9 this Tuesday, the 25th of March 2025. The IGP dilemma. Over 100 NPP MPs signed no confidence motion against suspended IGP Deshabandhu Tennakon. Samagi Jana Balawega declares support for the removal of the IGP. Export support. Minister of Industries highlights the need for a land bank to support export industries. Reveals plans to expedite the enactment of the Anti-Dumping Act in the coming days. New ventures. Ceylon Petroleum Corporation to begin exporting lubricating oil within 2 months. Reveals CPC chairman. Firm response. Opposition urges government to take a firm stance against sanctions imposed by the UK on 3 former Triforces commanders and a former deputy minister.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lanka Kiren Perata. Obe Vishwasi Dino Sensodyne, then Langamati Pharmacy in Labata Hacker.
Kanta Parisan karagattොත් අපි පරිස්සම්.
ඉතින් මොකටද නිකන් නාගන්නේ? ස්වදේශී කොහොඹ ලෙමන් ග්‍රාස් අද කාලෙට ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ම විසඳුම.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9, brought to you by Sri Lanka's premium news provider, Derana. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and from around the world. Now, in your top story tonight, a no-confidence motion to remove suspended IGP Deshabandhu Tennakon from office was submitted to the Speaker of Parliament today by a group of parliamentarians of the National People's Power. Meanwhile, leader of the opposition Sajith Premadasa assured the support of the Samagi Jana Balawega to the motion, which was signed by over 100 MPs of the NPP.
The Mathura Magistrates Court on the 27th of February ordered the arrest of 8 police officers, including then Acting Inspector General of Police Deshabandhu Tennakon, in connection with the death of a police sergeant of the Colombo Crime Division during a shooting near a hotel in Valigama, Mathura 2023. The IGP, who evaded his arrest for 20 days, appeared before the Mathura Magistrate Courts on the 19th of March, after which he was ordered to be remanded until the 3rd of April. Against this backdrop, a group of National People's Power parliamentarians arrived at the Parliament today to submit a letter proposing the removal of Deshabandhu Tennakon from the position of Inspector General of Police. The letter, signed by 115 NPP MPs, was handed over to the Speaker this afternoon.
We
handed over this letter to the Speaker of Parliament on the grounds of misconduct and corruption, gross abuse of power, gross neglect of duty and gross partiality in the exercise of duties. The letter should be presented to Parliament by the Speaker. I hope it will be presented to Parliament on the 8th of next month. Meanwhile, the Samagi Jana Balawega expressed their support for the decision. I agree with this motion. We raised concern regarding Deshabandhu Tennakon over breach of trust during the previous regime. However, the appointment of Deshabandhu Tennakon as the IGP was against the constitution. The former president is behind this anti-constitutional conspiracy. Not only him, but the former Speaker of Parliament should also be held responsible. However, those who raise concerns about this matter now were nowhere to be found in the past. However, it is fortunate that they submitted a no-confidence motion against the suspended IGP even after some time. The Removal of Officers Procedure Act No. 5 of 2002 outlines the provisions for the removal of an Inspector General of Police. As per the Act, they can be removed on grounds of being declared incompetent by a court of competent jurisdiction, being unable to hold office due to illness or other physical or mental infirmity, being convicted of an offence involving corruption, treason or bribery, being convicted of misconduct or corruption, being convicted of serious abuse of powers of his office, being convicted of serious dereliction of duty, being convicted of gross partiality in the exercise of his office, having ceased to be a citizen of Sri Lanka.
A motion to remove an IGP from office may be brought on one or more of these grounds.
A resolution for removal must be presented to Parliament with the support of a majority of MPs. Following that, a 3-member committee of inquiry should be established comprising a Supreme Court judge nominated by the Chief Justice, the Chairman of the Police Commission and an eminent individual in the fields of law or public administration. This committee will examine all the facts presented in the relevant proposal. Following that, some recommendations will be presented to Parliament. If a majority of MPs, including absentees, vote in favour, the Inspector General of Police can be removed immediately.
Union Assurance. චන්දුරුසුනේ කාගෙන් මනාපේ සිංහ TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Deputy Minister of Defence Aruna Jayasekara says disputes between criminal gangs do not pose a threat to national security. Addressing the media, the Deputy Minister assured that the government has taken steps to ensure public security. We have ensured public security. We have implemented a dedicated program for this purpose conducted by the Minister of Public Security in collaboration with the police. We have ensured the public security of Sri Lanka. This is not a resurgence of crime but rather a dispute between criminal gangs. This certainly does not affect national security. The Ministry of Public Security is taking action to address this. You will have to question the opposition leader himself. As I said, we have ensured public security. If you question him about it, he will explain. The United Kingdom yesterday imposed sanctions on 4 Sri Lankans, including 3 former Triforces commanders and a former deputy minister, whom it claims are responsible for serious human rights violations during the Sri Lankan civil war. Meanwhile, responding to this development today, opposition parliamentarians and politicians urged the government to take a firm stance against the sanctions.
The United Kingdom yesterday imposed sanctions on 4 Sri Lankans, including 3 former Triforces commanders and a former deputy minister, whom it claims are responsible for serious human rights abuses and violations during the Sri Lankan civil war, including extrajudicial killings, torture and/or perpetration of sexual violence. Those sanctioned include former Chief of Defence Staff General Shavendra Silva, former Navy Commander Admiral of the Fleet Wasantha Karanagoda, former Army Commander General Jagat Jayasuriya and former Eastern Province Commander of the LTTE Vinegamurthy Muralidharan, also known as Karuna Amman, who later became a deputy minister in the Sri Lankan government. The sanctions include UK travel bans as well as the freezing of the assets within the UK. Announcing the sanctions, the UK Secretary of State, Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Affairs David Lammy said that the UK government looks forward to working with the new Sri Lankan government to improve human rights in Sri Lanka and welcomes their commitments on national unity. Meanwhile, commenting on the sanctions imposed on the X platform, leader of Sarvajana Palaya MP Dirit Jayavira expressed his disappointment regarding the Sri Lankan government's lackluster response to the United Kingdom's decision, highlighting the pivotal role of the former Triforces commanders in ending a brutal terrorist conflict. MP Jayavira emphasised the need for a strong response from the government to counter the UK's decision, which he claims to be rooted in misinformation being spread about Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, more politicians commented in this regard today.
Even at a time when the people of Jaffna have pledged their support to a Sinhalese-led government, we are curious as to why this has happened. President Anura Dissanayake must clearly convey the government's stance on this matter to the international community. Apart from winning the war, the Triforces and the then government rendered an invaluable service by bringing it to an end. We must acknowledge this despite our political differences. Sending these war veterans to the execution block is something we, as a party, strongly oppose.
එක්සත් රාජධානියෙන් අපි ප්‍රශ්න තුනක්
We posed 3 questions to the UK government regarding this decision. What investigations was conducted by the UK to determine that our war veterans committed war crimes? Secondly, were these war veterans given a fair opportunity to prove their innocence before being labelled as perpetrators? When the UK has become a safe haven for one of the world's most ruthless terrorist organizations, how does it justify to the international community branding the forces that ended that terrorism as perpetrators?
එක්සත් රාජධානිය ලෝකයට පැහැදිලි කරනවාද?
ඒ වගේම අපි දකිනවා වර්තමාන ආණ්ඩුව ඒවට ඇහුන්නේ නැහැ වගේ ඉන්නවා.
We see the incumbent government turning a blind eye to this issue. We question whether this is an attempt to fulfill promises made to the diaspora during the elections. However, the government's official stance has not yet been communicated by the Foreign Ministry. That must be done first. These war veterans fought for the country, not for personal gain.
කරේ රට වෙනුවෙන් මිසක් තමන්ගේ පෞද්ගලික ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෙවෙයි.
කොටි ත්‍රස්වාදයේ ජාත්‍යන්තර
The international network of the LTT terrorist group operates from the UK, particularly London, with the UK providing them protection. The UK government should be ashamed of betraying its own policies for the sake of votes and money.
දෙමළ ඡන්දවලට සහ දෙමළ අයගේ මුදල් වලට පාවා දීම ගැන
බෑන්ඩ් එක දාපු එක සම්බන්ධයෙන් පොඩි අදහසක් දෙන්නකෝ අපිට. ඒ සම්බන්ධව මට ආරංචි වුණා. මම ඒ සම්බන්ධව බලලා තොරතුරක් දෙන්න.
Fast track your career from O levels with eSoft.
ඩයිබටසෝල් සීනි වලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
කැලණි වයර් කිසි ගින්නක් නැහැ.
කිසි ගින්නක් නෑ. කැලණි ෆයර් ෂීල්ඩ් වයර්.
It was revealed before the Committee on Public Accounts that the government has incurred losses of 1.2 billion rupees due to the issuance of fraudulent vehicle registration certificates by the Department of Motor Traffic. The government had also faced a loss of 122 million rupees owing to the misuse of diplomatic vehicle registration numbers to register other vehicles.
The Committee on Public Accounts during a recent meeting was able to reveal that the government incurred a loss of 1.2 billion rupees due to the issuance of fraudulent registration certificates by changing the serial numbers of pre-registered engines and chassis into those of illegal imported ones. It was also revealed that due to the failure to charge the prescribed fees for the registration of 296 motorcycles of engine capacity between 201 and 450 cc, the government has incurred a loss of 78.15 million rupees. Additionally, it was disclosed to the Committee on Public Accounts that 3,088 motorcycles had been registered without cabinet approval and without the necessary legal documentation required for registration. The committee also examined the fraudulent issuance of vehicle registration certificates for unused vehicle registration numbers by the Department of Motor Traffic, which had caused a loss of 6.2 million rupees to the government. It was also revealed that the misuse of diplomatic vehicle registration numbers to register other vehicles had led to a loss of 122 million rupees. Following an inquiry into corruption, fraud and irregularities that have occurred within the Department of Motor Traffic, the committee recommended that disciplinary actions be taken against all responsible officials and that the progress of these actions be reviewed monthly. It was also recommended that the relevant law enforcement authorities take legal action regarding any criminal activities that had taken place.
Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development Sunil Handunethi highlights the need for a land bank to support Sri Lanka's export industries. Addressing the 25th Exporters Forum, the minister also revealed plans to expedite the enactment of the Anti-Dumping Act in the coming days.
The Sri Lanka Export Development Board yesterday hosted the 25th Exporters Forum at its headquarters, providing a platform for exporters to voice their concerns and seek practical solutions to challenges in the export sector. The event was held under the patronage of Minister of Industry Sunil Handunethi, along with several deputy ministers.
අපේ අමාත්‍යාංශ කර්මාන්ත අමාත්‍යාංශේ වැඩිම සාකච්ඡාවල් තිබුණේ වැඩිම සංවාදයන් තියෙන්නේ.
In the Ministry of Industries, the majority of discussions focus on overcoming challenges in the export sector. Whatever we do, strengthening our export sector is the key to delivering results for the country. We had to agree to the IMF's conditions because our economy was weak. The reason we accepted terms that we otherwise would not have was the weakening of the domestic portion of the economy. We must acknowledge this reality whether we like it or not. Our guiding principle is that every person who spends a rupee must plan to earn $1. We know that is not easy. One of the major challenges faced by exporters is the issue of land availability. Sufficient land is essential for developing the export industry. We have discussed this with the President as well. We need a land bank. Just as we allocate land for agriculture, we must also allocate land for industries according to a strategic plan. Additionally, we must integrate into global value chains. To do this, we must produce goods that can compete with imported products. Another significant challenge exporters face is taxation. There is a risk that many industries will lose the simplified value-added tax system. We are currently in discussions with the Inland Revenue Department to address this issue. Before making major decisions, we must first settle all outstanding SVAT arrears and find a sustainable solution. We have submitted several proposals and discussions are ongoing. Taxes on raw materials are also weakening the export industry. Although we have systems such as the temporary importation of export processing, we need to provide additional support for exporters. The government has made a policy decision in principle to introduce a new tariff policy. The initial stages of this process have been completed. Additionally, we need to expedite the introduction of the Anti-Dumping Act in Parliament, as we have observed foreign products entering our markets at substandard prices and quality levels. Policies must be established to address this issue. Now, government has decided to revise the tariff paid for electricity generated by rooftop solar panels. The Ministry of Power and Energy said the proposed rates would vary based on the scale of energy production.
According to the Ministry of Energy, a cabinet paper outlining the proposed amendments has been submitted to the Cabinet of Ministers following recommendations from the Ceylon Electricity Board. The revision aims to adjust the existing payment structure for solar power generation, aligning it with current energy policies and market conditions. At present, solar energy producers receive 27 rupees per unit of electricity supplied to the grid. Under the proposed changes, this rate is expected to be reduced with payments determined by the capacity of the solar system. Accordingly, 19 rupees per unit is to be paid for solar systems generating less than 20 kilowatts, 17 rupees per unit for systems producing between 20 and 100 kilowatts, and 15 rupees per unit for larger systems generating between 100 and 500 kilowatts. The Ministry of Energy clarified that these new tariff rates will apply only to newly installed rooftop solar systems, while existing installations will continue to receive payments at the current rate.
Minister of Agriculture K.D. Lanka claims that the government has completely eliminated corruption, waste, fraud and inactivity from Sri Lankan politics. However, addressing a seminar organised by the National Trade Union Centre, the minister added that corruption cannot be completely eliminated from the country until the public service is cleansed of corruption.
The seminar titled Budget Yesterday, Today and Tomorrow, organised by the National Trade Union Centre, was held this evening in Colombo.
The
people who organised press conferences, protests, rallies and political meetings are all a part of the current government. So we have responsibility and we believe that the working class views us from that perspective. The salary increase was provided without the people asking for it. They shouldn't have to ask. When a government consisting of the people of the working class is brought to power, we believe that the people shouldn't have to ask anymore. The Minister of Public Administration prepared the circular regarding the salary increase. It was approved by the Cabinet. The Gazette is scheduled to be issued today. Some people think that our stance is that everything has to be done by the government. That is not true. What happens if the government is involved in any economic activity? It leads to a loss. It is because of bureaucracy. It is very reluctant. Nothing is getting done because no matter what, they receive their salaries. Even the public supports the idea of divesting state-owned institutions and corporations because of the corruption and inactivity going on. When other parties arrive to fill the vacancies created by the government's withdrawal, they grant those opportunities to their close friends. That is how politicians become corrupted. It still continues. Within the past 4 months, many have come to me and said that they will pay me if I allow them to import corn. Companies approach the government when they see that we are withdrawing from the medicine industry. Neoliberalism has caused widespread corruption. I certify that the government has completely eliminated corruption, waste, fraud and inactivity in politics. But it still continues in state institutions. When that is stopped, corruption will come to an end. Former President Ranil Wickremesinghe asserts that it is the incumbent government's responsibility to ensure that Sri Lanka fully emerges from the crisis, though the island nation was directed towards economic recovery to a certain extent during the previous government. Former President Wickremesinghe urged the government to continue agreements inked with investors during the previous regime rather than bringing in new proposals, warning that it could lead to a breach of investor confidence.
The book, The Panchayuda of Sri Lanka's Economy, written by former Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardena, was launched today at the Centre for Banking Studies premises with the participation of former President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
නිදාසින් පස්සේ ලංකා ඉතිහාසයේ ප්‍රථම වතට ජාතික ආර්ථික ප්‍රතිපත්තියක් පාර්ලිමේන්තුව විසින් නීතිගත කරපු එකම නායකයා බවට ඉතිහාසයේ සනිටුවන් වෙන්නේ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ නමයි කියන එක මම මේ අවස්ථාවේදී සඳහන් කරන්න කැමති වෙනවා.
මොකක්ද අපි මේ ආර්ථිකයට කළා තියෙන්නේ?
What have we done to the economy? The patient who was once deprived of oxygen is now being taken off life support but remains in the ICU. It is the responsibility of this government to ensure the patient recovers properly. To grow the economy, we need both capital and technology. However, we lack sufficient capital to undertake these initiatives, nor do we have the necessary technology. Therefore, we must seek these resources from external sources, just as China and India have done. We must build confidence among investors and avoid action that could shatter that trust by reverting to outdated methods. That is why I have been concerned in recent days. The government has announced that all companies involved in the energy sector must submit new proposals. This decision could create uncertainty among investors, making them believe that Sri Lanka is not a reliable place to invest. As a result, they may hesitate to come here. With great difficulty, we have managed to attract a few investors, and we must safeguard their confidence at all costs. The government must reconsider this decision and continue with the established approach. The agreement with India's Adani has become a significant factor. We must bring the Adani project to Sri Lanka. When I discussed this with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he expressed interest in purchasing power from Sri Lanka. Although I am not fully aware of our electricity production capacity, I mentioned that we could supply between 25 to 50 gigawatts. If we can achieve this, imagine the level of investment that would flow into the country. India is our ally and we can rely on them for support in various areas. During my last visit to Delhi, Indian officials asked me whether Sri Lanka was now taking an anti-India stance. We must not give such an impression. Instead, we must strengthen our relationship and move forward together.
අපි ඉන්දියාවට සමහර මං රට ගිය දෙල්ලි ගියදී තිබුණ හැව අපි දැන් ඉන්දියාවට විරුද්ධද කියලා. ඒ මතය දෙන්න හොඳ නැහැ. අපි ඉදිරියට යන්න ඕනේ.
The circular pertaining to the revision of salaries for the public sector has been issued in accordance with the 2025 budget proposals. The relevant circular was issued today to the ministry secretaries, provincial chief secretaries and heads of departments with the signature of the secretary to the Minister of Public Administration, provincial councils and local government. According to the Gazette, salaries must be paid as per the salary scales indicated in the Gazette from April 1st this year without payment of any arrears. Welcome back. You're joining First at 9 on Other Derana 24. Now, Chairman of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, DJ Rajakaruna, says Sri Lanka will be able to export lubricating oil within another 2 months. Addressing a function of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation Employees Union, the chairman said Bangladesh has already placed an order for a shipment of lubricant.
We are commencing our duties with clear policies. Through the implementation of these policies, we intend to develop the nation as an energy center of the world. We have identified our potential to achieve that. One of the reasons that led to the country's bankruptcy was that we did not modernize the oil refinery at the required time. Now, cabinet approval has been granted to call for an expression of interest. Very soon, we will call for tenders to construct the refinery. The contract to initiate the Jet A1 pipeline project to transfer aviation fuel from Muthurajawala to the Bandaranaike International Airport in Katunayaka was awarded, but the project did not progress. Therefore, we have recalled tenders. Around 600 ships pass by our country and we intend to turn them towards us and sell our maritime fuel. The CPC lost that opportunity earlier. It has been decided decided to present a cabinet paper to initiate that process as a joint venture between the CPC and the harbour. We were able to double lubricant oil sales. When it comes to the agro business, Sipetco has been blocked from importing certain agro products, but private companies sell those products at higher prices. These concerns are being addressed now. In another 2 months' time, we will start exporting Sipetco lubricating oil. Bangladesh has already placed an order. They had already removed the 2 pipelines laid to transport aviation fuel with the intention of shutting down the project. Last week, we convened with a company that supplies aviation fuel to 3,000 airports. We have already begun discussions in that regard. We have reduced our prices compared to the region to increase sales. We will sign an agreement with Emirates in the near future. We intend to give them credit facilities. The board will decide this week to provide a loan from the CPC to Ceylon Petroleum Storage Terminals Limited to renovate the 2 pipelines. We have the funds for it. We will get approval from the board to call for tenders in a month or two.
Now in your stock update, the Colombo Bourse closed in red today as a result of price losses in counters such as Selinco Holdings, LOLC Holdings and Hatton National Bank. The all-share price index closed 0.03% lower at 15,908.23 points, while the S&P SL20 also edged down by 0.03% to close at 4,757.81 points. Market turnover was 2.8 billion rupees. Foreign investors closed as net buyers, offloading shares worth 122 million rupees. Welcome back. Now in international developments, the White House announced today that both Ukraine and Russia have agreed to support a proposed ceasefire in the Black Sea. And that's all for tonight on First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.